thank you. First of all, I think on a practical level, some of the discussion we've had here, incense, this is not an incense, and this is being sold not for what it's intended. So when you discuss something, whether it's a whipped cream can or there's compressed air for your computers, that was clearly purchased or sold for a particular purpose, and this is not. And we all know that. The purchasers know it, the seller knows it. So it's a very different issue in terms of whether council here have said it or people coming to the table have said, well, you can use these things. You can use a lot of things in a misappropriate way, but this is only intended for one use, and that is a hallucinogen.
And she does have a point there. But I still think a little more logic could have been used.
I understand the concern that we might not have enough scientific knowledge, but those of us who have children know they're extremely resourceful. My goodness, the young men who came here tonight, if they put a little bit of the effort into the research they did, my goodness, they could be biochemists and coming up with something. It was impressive what they did, although I am a little suspicious of Dr. Hoffman because you all quoted him, and that just seems a little odd that he's the same experts you quoted all the way through. But that being said, I don't want to wait. I understand this is not a perfect ordinance, and I heard that from Chief York and Sergeant Thurston. But the point is, as Chief York pointed out, first and foremost, our children are paramount. So he didn't say, I don't have the money. I've never heard the police ever say that they're short on manpower. Of course, we'd always like more police, more fire, whatever, but that's not the issue. It's just he wants to know that what we passed today, that he can enforce, that his police can enforce, and that it will stick. And so that's why he was calling for the infield test, because if he sees it on shelves and it's no longer labeled as K2 or Spice or the other advertised names, how can they stop the convenience owner from selling it? How can they arrest anybody? So this is not complete. We knew that. And as I said, children are resourceful. Today it's K2. Tomorrow it'll be called something else. But I think as long as we start something, we're sending the message, as they did in Butler, Indiana. The 2 convenience stores there, it was reported in the news a couple weeks ago, they voluntarily removed it from the shelves. We have a much bigger city with a lot more places to sell it, and don't tell me those head shops don't know exactly what they're selling when you're named 20 past 4. So I think this is a good start. I do think it's ironic because they keep talking about marijuana, and I think there are a lot in the public that kind of forget that's still illegal. Mm-hmm. The federal government chooses not to enforce that, but that's illegal. And you've seen the disaster in the state of California, now in Michigan, where these, quote, legal medical marijuana shops have sprung up, and the volume of business that they're doing in the states know they can now tax it just because they have this unbelievable deficit. But really, at the end of the day, the underlying damage done to using marijuana is still there because
no worse than alcohol. And a matter of fact, marijuana has a lot more health benefits to it than alcohol. I think you might want to do some more research on that, Councilwoman.
All addiction research will tell you that the sooner children under the age of 18, the earlier they are to engage in at-risk behavior, smoking, whether it's a cigarette or something else, drinking, or other at-risk behavior, hurting themselves, they are more likely to be addicts and have lifelong problems. This is one of those instances where we need to keep it out of the hands of the children.
She is absolutely right about every comment she made right there.
I am sympathetic to
that includes
the parent
alcohol.
who came and talked about being punished as a parent when your child has this in possession. And that is something that maybe we can look at in terms of fining them. But at the end of the day, I know as a parent that I'm responsible for them. And unless they are emancipated, that what they do, right or wrong, that I will be financially responsible for them. So I empathize with him, and maybe going forward, we don't really know how these tickets because that's all we're doing. People might have misunderstood. We can't criminalize it. No one's going to be put in jail because of this unless the state bans it. But maybe going forward when we fine them, that will be up to the discretion of whoever actually reviews the tickets. But also, I would recommend going forward, because these fines are significant, and I think they should be, particularly for business owners, because if it's a $50 fine, there's no incentive, because there's thousands and thousands of dollars being made. I think those fines should, or at least a portion of those fines, should be put into some fund that can be used for addiction counseling in the city, because there's a huge need for that kind of a program, and there are lots of gaps in the system, as I'm sure the Reverend at the Rescue Ministries and Patty Chris at Care's House would tell us.
And that's exactly what we should be using with the money for the useless drug war, educating people and trying to rehabilitate people. But Councilwoman, you can't help somebody who wants to get high. They got to help themselves. Unless they want to stop, they're not going to.
Tell us as well. And finally, I think it's ironic when some of those who are opposed to this ban, maybe even on council, or have a more liberal view about this. You know, we have a society now where we are looking at what we eat, our salt intake, our sugar intake, our soda intake, and all those kind of things. And those things, again, are not inherently dangerous to us. But this is something clearly only meant to alter someone's state, and it has no good use, no good medical use to it.
So then I would ask you, then show me what the medical use of fluoride, barium, chromium, and some other poisons and heavy metals are doing in our drinking water. Those have absolutely no good health effects.
I am in favor of this current ordinance and look forward to adding to it, changing it as we get more information.
Councilman Shoaff.
Yeah, thank you. Well, like most of us, I don't know much about this, certainly no personal experience. I'm just learning about it recently. But I've been listening to Chief York and Sergeant Thurston, people in the Dr. McMahon, Jonathan Ray, the young people that Councilman Hines has told us about who are supporting this. People who are...
Just none of the people who were against the ban. You listen to everybody but them. Apparently that's what you just said.
In the field and seeing the problem firsthand and trying to deal with it, and I find their testimony and their recommendations very persuasive. I also appreciate Mr. Moxter's testimony in explaining to us the ways these substances work on the mind. And I'm not so sure it's only bad for young people. I think as an older person, I don't want to mess up my mind either. But seriously, I think something that's designed to make us our minds dysfunction temporarily is very likely to have a more long-term impact when used regularly. Our minds, our brains, our bodies are not static. They're constantly changing and responding to things that are done to.
How hypocritical. They say this about this and every other drug and fail to mention alcohol. Alcohol is not only dangerous, but you can die from using too much. There's serious health consequences to alcohol, and nobody ever mentions that, man. Hypocrites.
Done to them. So it goes very much against my instincts to be supportive of a substance like that. I will be very happy to support the ordinance.
Well.
Councilman Bender.
I got kind of a mixed feeling about the whole thing. One side of me says that I think that Councilman Pape is probably correct in his stating that regulation might be the better way to go. But then from my other job, I look at it and I see the drug abuse on a daily basis, whether it's alcohol or cocaine. Meth is the big thing that's probably worse than anything else that we're facing at this time.
Absolutely.
Marijuana, and now it's the K2. The only concern that I have with the ordinance is the enforcement end of it. And I think most law enforcement officers that have been talked to over the last couple of weeks, that's the same general feeling, is how do we enforce this? I think it can be done, but, just Larry, this is, and like Liz said, this is a work in progress, and you're going to have to probably make amendments on a weekly, or not a weekly, but probably every year, because from what I've learned tonight, this stuff changes. So I would support it.
We thank you, Councilman Bender. At least you have the honesty and the wherewithal to look at the liberty side of issues, and we respect you for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Or at least I do.
First, there's been a lot of mention of marijuana here, and I want to say I've looked at a lot of material and talked to a lot of folks about this. There